I never imagined I'd be sitting in an upscale restaurant on my mother's birthday being publicly accused of stealing from her, but there I was, surrounded by fine china and frigid stares, watching my family destroy each other before my eyes. My name is Elaine Russo, and at 32, I've built a successful life for myself. After years of relentless work and late nights, I'd become a senior forensic accountant at one of Boston's most prestigious firms. The bitter irony of being accused of theft made my stomach churn. I spend my days tracking down actual financial criminals, meticulously following their digital footprints. The evening had started promisingly enough. I'd arrived early at Lou Bistro, despite just closing a major case that had kept me working until 3 a.m. the previous night. My eyes burned with exhaustion, but I'd pushed through it to arrange a special surprise for Mom's 65th birthday. She'd been moving more slowly lately, wincing whenever she stood up, but I'd attributed that to her worsening knee problems. Since Dad passed away 3 years ago, the light in her eyes had dimmed, but tonight was supposed to rekindle it. "The wine selection is disappointing," Mom said, her first words after I'd greeted her with a hug. Something felt off in her tone, but I couldn't quite place it. My brother Vincent arrived next with his wife Megan. Usually warm and effusive, today he barely acknowledged me with a curt nod. Behind them came my younger sister Natalie, her manicured fingers obsessively tapping on her phone screen, pausing only to take staged selfies when she thought no one was looking. The tension in the private dining room was palpable, pressing down on my chest like a weight. We managed to get through the appetizers with painful small talk. It wasn't until the main courses arrived that Vincent finally exploded. "I can't pretend anymore," he announced, standing up so abruptly his chair scraped against the polished floor. "We need to talk about the money, Elaine." I set down my fork, a chill running through me. "What money?" "Don't act innocent," Natalie snapped, finally looking up from her phone, her eyes flashing with accusation. "We have proof of what you did." $70,000, Vincent said, voice trembling with what looked like righteous anger. "That's how much vanished from Mom's accounts last month, the same month you helped her set up online banking and advised her on investments." I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me lightheaded. Last month, Mom had asked for help modernizing her finances. She'd been nervous about digital banking, so I'd spent an entire weekend walking her through everything. Now the strange glances and cold shoulders made horrifying sense. "You seriously think I stole from Mom?" My voice cracked with disbelief. "We don't think, we know," Vincent stated flatly. "The transfers happened right after you got access to her accounts. The timing is obvious." Mom sat silently at the head of the table, tears streaming down her lined face. The sight tore at my heart like physical pain. "Mom, you can't possibly believe this?" I pleaded. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "The money was for my knee surgery, Elaine. The procedure I've been saving for all year. How could you do this to me?" "The specialized surgery. Mom needed a complicated knee replacement that her insurance wouldn't fully cover. We'd all been concerned about the medical costs, but stealing?" The accusation made acid rise in my throat. "I'm a forensic accountant specializing in financial crimes," I said, fighting to keep my voice from shaking. "I investigate fraud for a living. Why would I steal money in such an amateurish, traceable way?" "Because you thought we'd never suspect Little Miss Perfect," Natalie said, her voice dripping with resentment. "The brilliant daughter, the successful one with the fancy condo and designer clothes, who would ever question you?" The naked hatred in her voice stunned me. Natalie had always been the family's self-proclaimed free spirit, changing majors 3 times before dropping out of college completely. Now she worked at an artisanal coffee shop while pretending to be an influencer, living in Mom's guest house rent-free. Had this poisonous jealousy been festering all along? "Return the money now," Vincent demanded, his voice carrying across the restaurant, "or you'll never see Mom again. We've already contacted a lawyer about getting a restraining order." That's when something crystallized in my mind. Vincent's gleaming Tesla, the one he started driving last month. Natalie's Gucci handbag, which I'd noticed her photographing earlier for Instagram. The diamond tennis bracelet glinting on her wrist. Suddenly, the pieces formed a picture that made my blood run cold. I reached for my designer tote, my hands surprisingly steady despite my pounding heart. For the past month, I'd been investigating a series of sophisticated financial crimes at work, multiple accounts systematically drained using a particular digital signature. I'd been quietly building a case file, meticulously gathering evidence, including transaction records, electronic timestamps, and security footage from various locations. "You really want to know what happened to Mom's money?" I asked, my voice taking on the professional edge I used in fraud investigations. "I can show you exactly where it went." I pulled out my tablet, opening a secure file. "Before I show this, I want everyone to understand that what you're about to see is admissible evidence in court." I turned the screen around, displaying the crystal-clear security footage from First National Bank. The timestamp showed 2:15 p.m. on October 15, precisely when the first major withdrawal from Mom's account was processed. The color drained from Vincent's face as the video played. There he stood at the teller's counter, wearing his signature navy blazer with the gold buttons. Next to him was Natalie, anxiously checking her phone, the exact nervous gesture she was making right now. "That footage can't be," Natalie stammered, her perfectly applied makeup suddenly unable to hide her fear. "Bank security footage is digitally watermarked and timestamped with blockchain verification," I explained, my professional expertise flowing naturally. "It's forensically impossible to alter without leaving digital artifacts. I also have the withdrawal authorization forms with forged signatures. They're quite good forgeries, but the pressure points and stroke patterns don't match Mom's handwriting." My forensics team identified 14 distinct discrepancies. Diana's head snapped up, her expression transforming from sorrow to shock. "Vincent? Natalie? What is Elaine talking about?" I hated doing this, hated seeing the devastation sweeping across my mother's face, but they'd forced my hand. From my briefcase, I extracted a leather portfolio containing my meticulously prepared investigation file. "The funds were siphoned in 3 carefully planned transactions," I explained, laying out the evidence methodically. "First electronic transfer October 15th, $25,000. Second, October 18th, $20,000. Final, October 22nd, $25,000. I've traced it all, the accounts, the subsequent transfers to offshore holding entities, and the eventual purchases. Including that Tesla, Vincent. And that Gucci collection, Natalie." Mom picked up the bank statements with visibly trembling hands. "But how could they possibly access my accounts? Remember when you were hospitalized for your preliminary knee assessments last month?" I asked gently. "Vincent insisted on staying with you overnight, said he was worried. Your purse with your wallet, ID, and phone remained in that hospital room the entire time." The complete picture was now painfully clear. Vincent had gathered Mom's banking information during that hospital stay. He and Natalie had deliberately waited until after I helped Mom set up digital banking, knowing I would be the perfect scapegoat when the money vanished. "Why would you do this?" Mom's voice broke as she stared at her other children. Vincent's face flushed deep crimson. "My investment firm is under SEC investigation," he blurted out, sweat beading on his forehead. "I needed emergency cash to cover some client accounts before the audit. Natalie said we could just borrow it and replace it before anyone discovered it was gone." "Borrow it?" My voice dripped with disbelief. "You stole Mom's surgery money, created an elaborate scheme to frame me, and you're calling it borrowing? That's not borrowing, that's fraud, identity theft, and criminal conspiracy." "You've always been so damn superior," Natalie hissed, eyes blazing with long-harbored resentment. "The golden child with the perfect career and perfect life. Do you have any idea what it feels like living in your shadow year after year, watching Mom and Dad praise every little thing you did? So your solution was to steal from our mother, who's in pain daily, and destroy my reputation?" The raw hurt in my voice echoed in the sudden silence of the restaurant. "Did you even consider for one moment what this would do to her? To our family?" Megan, Vincent's wife, had been silent throughout the entire confrontation. Now she stood up, clutching her purse with white knuckles. "I can't be part of this," she said, her voice quivering with emotion. "Vincent, you told me we were coming to confront Elaine about missing money that might affect Jake's college fund. You never once mentioned you were the one who stole it." The private dining room fell silent except for Diana's muffled sobs. This was more devastating than anything I could have imagined when I arranged this birthday celebration. My siblings had not only stolen from our mother but had meticulously planned to destroy my reputation and career in the process. The level of calculated malice was breathtaking. "The Financial Crimes Unit has already been briefed on this case," I said quietly, the professional in me taking control of my turbulent emotions. "They're simply waiting for Mom's official statement confirming she didn't authorize these transfers before they move forward with charges." "Charges?" Vincent's face transformed from crimson to ashen gray. "You've got to be kidding. We're family, Elaine. You wouldn't do that to us." "Family doesn't commit fraud against family," Diana said, her voice surprisingly firm despite her tears. "And family certainly doesn't conspire to frame someone who's devoted their life to fighting financial crimes." I reached across the table and covered her trembling hand with mine. "I've already consulted with the surgical center. They can reschedule your procedure for next month. I've arranged to cover all the costs." "You shouldn't have to do that," Mom protested, her eyes filled with both gratitude and shame. I squeezed her hand firmly. "Yes, I do. Because that's what actual family does. We support each other through difficult times, not exploit vulnerabilities and steal from each other." Vincent and Natalie sat in stunned silence as Diana pulled out her phone. Her fingers shook visibly as she dialed the Financial Crimes Division number I had discreetly given her 3 weeks ago when I first uncovered the suspicious electronic trail. As she formally reported the fraud, I studied my siblings, really studied them. When had they transformed into these strangers wearing familiar faces? When had their envy and resentment festered so deeply that they would orchestrate something this destructive? And how had I missed the warning signs while chasing professional success? The birthday cake sat forgotten on the serving cart, the candles unlit as our family disintegrated before my eyes. This would be a birthday none of us would ever forget, for all the wrong reasons. And I knew with grim certainty that this was just the beginning of a painful journey. The days following the birthday disaster dissolved into a blur of police interviews, bank investigations, and increasingly disturbing revelations. I took emergency leave from work to help Mom navigate the legal and financial chaos my siblings had created. Each new discovery felt like another betrayal slicing through my heart. Mom and I sat in her sunny kitchen the morning after the confrontation, nursing cups of coffee and trying to process everything. The house felt unnaturally quiet, like the aftermath of a storm. "I found these hidden in Natalie's guest house," Mom said, sliding a stack of credit card statements across the table. Her hands trembled noticeably. "She's been opening accounts in my name for over a year." I examined the statements with my trained eye, my professional instincts automatically analyzing the pattern. 7 different premium credit cards, all maxed to their limits, designer clothing, luxury hotel stays, first-class flights, exclusive spa treatments. Natalie had been financing an Instagram-worthy lifestyle that bore no relationship to her barista salary. "This is textbook identity theft," I said, feeling sick to my stomach. "Mom, this goes beyond simple theft. Combined with the electronic banking fraud and the conspiracy charges, they could be facing serious jail time." "Could they really?" Mom's voice broke. "My own children." Before I could respond, my phone vibrated with an incoming message, a text from Megan, "Need to talk privately. There's critical information you don't have. Meet me?" An hour later, I sat across from Megan at a discreet corner table in a quiet coffee house downtown. She looked physically and emotionally exhausted, with visible stress lines and bloodshot eyes. "Vincent's gambling addiction has spiraled completely out of control," she stated flatly, clutching her mug with trembling hands. "That story about needing money for his investment business was just another lie. He's been losing hundreds of thousands at underground poker games." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Vincent had battled gambling addiction during college, but we all believed he'd overcome it. Dad had personally escorted him through an intensive rehabilitation program before his illness. How devastating is the situation? I asked, professional assessment mode engaging. Megan's laugh was brittle, almost hysterical. Devastating enough that he manipulated our 16-year-old son into providing false testimony to investigators. Jake told them he witnessed you accessing Diana's financial accounts on your laptop. He even claimed to have seen you transferring the money. He did what? I nearly knocked over my cappuccino in shock. Vincent coerced our child into participating in criminal conspiracy, Megan whispered, tears streaming freely now. Jake broke down last night, completely traumatized. Vincent convinced him it was just a harmless family matter, that no real consequences would follow. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. I've contacted a divorce attorney this morning. I cannot allow Jake to grow up believing this kind of manipulation and criminal behavior represents normal family dynamics. Back at Mom's house, I found her in Dad's meticulously preserved home office, surrounded by family photographs. She held one from my MBA graduation ceremony, all of us beaming at the camera, Dad proudly standing with his arm around my shoulders, Vincent and Natalie flanking us on either side. Were there warning signs I ignored? She asked, not looking up from the photo. Was I blind to what was happening? We all missed it, Mom, I said gently, sitting beside her and studying the seemingly perfect family portrait. We looked so genuinely happy in that captured moment. They became skilled at hiding their true feelings. Your father would be devastated, she said, carefully returning the framed photo to its place. He always told me that financial pressure reveals people's authentic character. I never imagined he was unknowingly describing his own children. The doorbell chimed aggressively, interrupting our reflection. Through the leaded glass window, I spotted Natalie on the porch, pacing anxiously, repeatedly checking her reflection in her phone camera. I recommend not answering, I advised, but Mom was already moving toward the entrance. Natalie burst in the moment the door opened. Mom, you have to withdraw the complaint. My attorney says it's multiple felony counts. Do you understand what this means? My entire social media career will be destroyed. You should have considered those consequences before committing identity theft, Mom replied, her voice containing a steely resolve I'd never heard before. You don't understand how desperate I was. Natalie's carefully applied makeup was streaked with tears. Do you have any concept of what it feels like watching Elaine succeed at everything while I'm struggling to get more than 50 likes on my posts? I just needed a financial boost to launch my influencer platform. By stealing someone's identity and committing fraud? I challenged, unable to contain my disbelief. How exactly would criminal activity advance your career goals? Natalie whirled toward me, eyes flashing with rage. Just shut up, Miss Perfect. You have absolutely no idea what it's like being the disappointment of this family. Mom and Dad invested everything in your fancy education and connections, there was nothing left for my dreams. That's completely untrue, Mom interjected firmly. We offered financial support for your education repeatedly. You chose to abandon your studies. 3 separate times. Because I couldn't possibly measure up to Elaine's perfect GPA and perfect career and perfect condo. Natalie was practically screaming now. Did you know she just closed a major financial crimes case that made national news? Another spectacular achievement for precious Elaine, while I can barely afford my phone bill without stealing. I studied my sister intently, truly seeing her for the first time. The head-to-toe designer outfit she wore while claiming poverty purchased with fraudulently obtained credit cards. The $300 balayage highlights in her expertly styled hair, the latest iPhone Pro with custom case clutched in her perfectly manicured hands, all financed through identity theft and fraud. You're not a failure because of me or my achievements, Natalie, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You're in this situation because of the choices you've deliberately made, over and over again. And now you have to confront the consequences of those choices. The Financial Crimes Division called earlier this morning, Mom added, standing straighter. They've requested we come in tomorrow to formally discuss the charges against both you and Vincent. Natalie's carefully constructed facade crumbled. You would actually send your own children to prison? Your own flesh and blood? You actually conspired to frame your own sister for multiple felonies? Mom responded evenly. The distinctive purr of a luxury engine interrupted our confrontation. Through the window, I spotted Vincent's Tesla pulling into the driveway. He emerged looking disheveled and exhausted, his usual meticulously groomed appearance completely abandoned. "Emergency family conference," he announced, barging in without knocking. "I've developed a solution to our situation." "You're violating the temporary protection order by being here," I pointed out calmly. The investigators were explicitly clear about the no-contact conditions. He dismissed this with an impatient gesture. "This supersedes legal technicalities. Listen carefully, I've formulated a plan that resolves everything. Elaine, your last case netted you a substantial bonus. If you simply provide us with enough funds to replace what was taken, Mom can inform the bank it was all a regrettable misunderstanding." The breathtaking audacity rendered me momentarily speechless. Mom, however, found her voice immediately. "Are you actually suggesting that Elaine should give you money to cover up your criminal activities against me and her?" "This extends far beyond just the stolen money now," I added, finding my professional voice. "You deliberately framed me for financial crimes that could have destroyed my career and reputation. You coerced Jake into providing false testimony. This isn't something that can be erased with a simple loan." Vincent's confident facade fractured visibly. "You're not grasping the bigger picture. If this becomes public, I'll lose my financial advisor license permanently. No client will ever trust me with their investments again. My entire career will be obliterated." "Your career managing other people's money and financial futures?" I asked, unable to hide my disbelief. "Perhaps that career should end, Vincent. You systematically stole from our mother while she was in pain. You've returned to gambling with clients' funds. You manipulated your teenage son into committing perjury. Megan betrayed my confidence?" His expression darkened dangerously. "She protected her child," I countered firmly. "She prioritized Jake's well-being and moral development, something you catastrophically failed to do as his father." Natalie, who had been uncharacteristically silent, suddenly spoke up. "Vincent might have a point. If Elaine helps us repay everything—" "No," Mom interrupted with unexpected authority. "No more enabling this behavior. No more covering up the consequences. You both need to face the reality of what you've done." Vincent's expression transformed into something ugly and threatening. "If you proceed with pressing charges, we're permanently finished as a family. You'll never see your grandchildren again. Jake will disappear from your life completely." The vicious threat poisoned the air between us. Mom's face drained of color, but her voice remained remarkably steady. "If that's your decision, Vincent. But I refuse to be emotionally blackmailed anymore. Not about this. Not ever again." I looked at my brother and sister standing there, these familiar-faced strangers who had replaced the siblings I once knew, and felt a profound, aching loss. The family captured in that graduation photo had vanished forever, shattered by greed, jealousy, and calculated betrayal. "You both need to leave now," I said quietly. "The investigators have your statements on record. They'll contact you about next procedures." "You're actually going to let them destroy our lives like this?" Natalie asked, her voice suddenly small and childlike. "Your own family? You ceased being family the moment you conspired to steal from our mother and destroy my reputation," I replied, feeling strangely calm in the face of such betrayal. "Everything that's happened since has only confirmed the depth of that break." As they stormed out, Mom collapsed into her armchair, looking suddenly frailer and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and discover this was all just a terrible nightmare," she whispered. I knelt beside her, taking her trembling hand in mine, feeling the delicate bones beneath paper-thin skin. "We're going to get through this together, Mom. I swear it." But as I heard Vincent's Tesla and Natalie's leased BMW roar down the driveway, a wave of grief washed over me. How could anyone possibly reassemble what remained of our shattered family? Some broken things remain permanently fractured. And perhaps that's how it should be. 1 month after the disastrous birthday dinner, I sat rigidly in the federal courthouse, watching my siblings enter their formal pleas. The charges were extensive and sobering: electronic funds transfer fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit financial crimes, falsifying evidence, and filing fraudulent police reports. It felt utterly surreal hearing these serious federal offenses attached to people who had once built sandcastles with me at the beach. Mom sat beside me, her posture perfect, her expression carefully controlled. She'd visibly aged years in just 4 weeks, but there was also a newfound resilience in her bearing. She'd refused all contact with Vincent and Natalie after their attempted emotional blackmail, channeling her profound grief into constructive action instead. She'd worked methodically with financial institutions to secure her accounts, implemented advanced security protocols, and even begun volunteering at a senior financial safety program, transforming her personal trauma into community service. Vincent stood first, wearing an expensive suit that somehow hung awkwardly on his frame. Megan sat in the rear of the courtroom with Jake, who kept his eyes fixed on the floor. The gambling addiction had been far more devastating than anyone had realized. Vincent had lost his position at the investment firm when internal auditors discovered he'd been systematically borrowing from client portfolios as well. "How do you plead to these charges?" the judge asked with clinical detachment. Vincent's confident voice faltered. "Guilty, Your Honor." Natalie followed, her usual designer wardrobe replaced by a conservative black dress. She'd been terminated from the artisanal coffee shop when the charges became public. The credit card companies were still calculating the total damages from her identity theft. "Guilty," she whispered, mascara streaking despite her visible effort to maintain her composure. I felt Mom's fingers tighten around mine as the judge scheduled the sentencing for the following month. The prosecutor had outlined the negotiated plea agreements. Vincent would serve 24 months in federal prison, Natalie 15 months. Both would be required to pay full restitution and face 5 years of supervised release. Outside the courthouse, Megan approached us hesitantly. Jake remained several steps behind, looking utterly lost in his father's oversized sports coat. "Elaine," Megan said softly, "Jake has something important he needs to tell you." My 16-year-old nephew stepped forward, his face a complex mixture of shame, fear, and relief. "I'm so sorry, Aunt Elaine. Dad convinced me it was just a stupid family prank, that my statement wouldn't really matter anyway. I never imagined." I interrupted him with a tight embrace. He froze momentarily, then crumpled against me, deep sobs racking his body. "I don't want him to go to prison," he managed between ragged breaths. "I know, Jake. I know." What else could I possibly say? How do you explain to a teenager why his father's betrayals merit incarceration? Mom gently placed her hand on Jake's shoulder. "You will always have a home with us, Jake. No matter what happens. Always." Megan wiped her eyes with a tissue. "We're relocating to my sister's place next week. I filed the divorce papers yesterday morning. Another casualty of my siblings' destructive choices. Another permanent fracture in what had once been a close-knit family." That evening, I found myself sifting through old family videos at Mom's house, searching for answers in those captured moments from our past. There was Natalie's dance competition victory before her first college attempt, Vincent's wedding to Megan before the gambling addiction resurfaced, holiday celebrations, summer beach trips, birthday parties. Fragments of time when our family still seemed intact and genuine. Mom discovered me surrounded by leather-bound photo albums and digital memory cards. Searching for warning signs, she asked gently, easing down beside me. Trying to pinpoint when everything fractured. When did they begin viewing me as a rival to be destroyed rather than their sister? My voice cracked slightly on the last word. "I've been torturing myself with the same questions," Mom admitted, picking up a framed photo of Natalie's first ballet recital. "Did your father and I somehow create this? By acknowledging your accomplishments? By helping finance your education? By being proud of your success? Mom, please don't blame yourself, I said firmly, feeling a surge of protectiveness. They made deliberate, calculated choices as adults. Adult decisions warrant adult consequences. She nodded slowly, absently tracing the photograph's edge. Intellectually, I understand that. But a mother's heart can't help questioning everything. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The sentencing hearing is scheduled next month. Their attorneys have requested we meet with them beforehand. I felt my body tense involuntarily. For what purpose? Supposedly to express remorse. Their legal team believes demonstrating genuine contrition might influence sentencing recommendations. She squeezed my hand reassuringly. We're under no obligation to attend. But we did attend, 7 days later, in a sterile conference room at their defense attorney's office. Vincent and Natalie sat opposite us, both appearing significantly diminished. The confident swagger had vanished from Vincent's bearing, the defiant spark extinguished from Natalie's eyes. I've been attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings, Vincent began. Twice weekly, sometimes more. I should have returned years ago after Dad's intervention. His voice trailed into silence. I've started intensive therapy, Natalie added. Addressing my deep-seated issues with competitive comparison and persistent feelings of inadequacy. They took turns delivering carefully crafted apologies, their words meticulously rehearsed. I listened intently, trying to detect authentic remorse beneath the obvious legal coaching. Mom listened too, her expression completely unreadable. When they finished, Mom finally spoke. I believe you're genuinely sorry for certain things. Sorry you were caught. Sorry you're facing serious consequences. But are you truly remorseful for what you actually did? For betraying the people who loved you unconditionally? For attempting to systematically destroy your sister's life and reputation? Neither could maintain eye contact. That's precisely what I suspected. Mom stood with quiet dignity, smoothing her skirt. I sincerely hope you both find healing and transformation during your incarceration. I hope this experience becomes a catalyst for genuine change. But I no longer trust either of you, and I'm not convinced I ever will again. As we prepared to leave, Natalie called out desperately, Elaine, don't you have anything at all to say to us? I turned back slowly. Just this, I would have helped you both without hesitation. If you had simply asked. That's what devastates me most profoundly. You chose calculated betrayal when you could have chosen vulnerability and trust. Walking out of that attorney's office, I felt something fundamental shift within me. The anger remained, the hurt persisted, but something else had transformed completely. I was no longer searching for the siblings I believed I had grown up with. Those people had vanished, if indeed they had ever truly existed. You responded perfectly, Mom said as we drove home through the autumn evening. Being authentically honest about your feelings was exactly right. Was it really? Sometimes I wonder if I had been more present, more attentive to their struggles. Stop that immediately. Mom's voice carried unexpected authority. You bear absolutely no responsibility for their deliberate choices. Your only responsibility lies in how you navigate the aftermath. The aftermath. Such an inadequate word for such a complex reality. In 30 days, my siblings would begin serving their prison sentences. Mom would undergo her specialized knee surgery, funded legitimately this time. Jake would enroll in a new private school in a different community. And me? I was discovering that sometimes the most profound injuries come from those you trusted completely. But genuine healing begins with accepting that you cannot repair everyone's fractured pieces. Sometimes the healthiest choice is protecting your own emotional well-being while carefully helping reconstruct what can genuinely be salvaged. 1 year after the sentencing hearing, life had established a new rhythm. Mom's knee surgery had been remarkably successful, and she'd committed herself to physical therapy with impressive dedication. I'd been promoted to senior director of forensic accounting at my firm, partly in recognition of how I'd handled the complex family fraud case. Sometimes life's most painful chapters unexpectedly catalyze our greatest personal growth. I visited Mom every Sunday afternoon without fail, and this particular evening we sat on her newly renovated porch swing watching the spectacular sunset paint the sky. 2 unopened letters rested on the small table between us, one from Vincent, one from Natalie. "They've been writing consistently every week," Mom commented, lightly touching the envelopes. Megan mentioned that Vincent is facilitating a Gamblers Anonymous group in the minimum security facility. Natalie's apparently teaching financial literacy classes to other inmates, attempting to create something constructive from this experience. I nodded, deliberately keeping my expression neutral. The growing collection of letters addressed to my condominium remained unopened in a cedar box in my closet. "Jake's academic performance has improved dramatically," Mom continued with genuine warmth. "Megan says he's becoming increasingly interested in studying criminal justice. He wants to help protect vulnerable people from financial exploitation." I smiled, feeling genuine pride in my nephew's remarkable transformation. We now had standing dinner dates with him and Megan twice monthly, carefully constructing new family bonds from the remnants of what had been destroyed. "Elaine," Mom said, her tone measured and thoughtful, "I've been reflecting deeply about the concept of forgiveness." I felt my body instantly tense. "Not forgetting," she quickly clarified, noting my reaction. "Never that. But carrying this constant anger and resentment, it creates its own burden." She was absolutely right. The anger had become my constant shadow, influencing everything: professional interactions, potential romantic relationships, even casual social encounters. Just last week, I'd abruptly ended a promising dinner with an intelligent, kind man because he mentioned his close relationship with his brother. The protective emotional barriers I'd constructed were shielding me from further pain, but they were simultaneously preventing authentic connection. "I received notification from the restitution monitoring program," I said, shifting slightly. "Vincent and Natalie have both consistently begun making their court-ordered payments. Small amounts, but remarkably regular." Mom nodded thoughtfully. "Small steps toward accountability. Do you ever question if we made the right decision? Pursuing formal charges?" "Daily," Mom admitted with quiet honesty. "But then I remember how their calculated actions revealed who they had truly become. They desperately needed this intervention, painful though it's been for everyone involved." I picked up Natalie's letter, feeling its surprising emotional weight in my hand. "I'm not prepared to read these messages yet." "That's perfectly valid. Emotional healing follows its own natural progression." We settled into comfortable contemplative silence as the evening sky transformed through spectacular shades of amber, violet, and gold. Mom had recently begun seeing someone, nothing serious, just occasional coffee with a retired literature professor from her physical therapy group. Life was gradually evolving forward. "I have something significant to share with you," I said, turning toward her. "I've been offered a position directing a comprehensive new fraud prevention initiative educating vulnerable populations about protecting themselves, their aging parents, and their small businesses from sophisticated financial schemes." Mom's eyes brightened with unmistakable pride. "You're going to prevent other families from experiencing the trauma we endured." "That's precisely my intention. Transform this painful experience into something meaningful and protective." She reached over and clasped my hand warmly. "Your father would be immensely proud of how you've navigated this entire situation with such integrity. He'd be equally proud of you, Mom. You refused to be emotionally manipulated. You maintained your boundaries with remarkable strength." Later that evening, alone in my condominium, I finally opened the cedar box and removed the accumulated stack of letters from my siblings. I didn't read them, but deliberately transferred them from the hidden box to a document storage container labeled Family Archive, not erased from memory, but no longer exercising control over my emotional present. My phone illuminated with an incoming message from Megan. Jake received an A+ on his criminal justice ethics presentation. He specifically mentioned his aunt as his primary inspiration. I smiled genuinely, responding immediately, "Please tell him how incredibly proud I am of his accomplishment." That's the fascinating truth about family connections. Sometimes the original structure completely collapses, but new, sometimes stronger bonds can emerge from the fragments. Jake and Megan had become my true family now, chosen family, connected through authenticity and mutual respect rather than mere biological obligation. The final golden rays of sunlight faded beyond my window as I immersed myself in developing my first fraud prevention workshop. The opening slide displayed, "Safeguarding Your Family's Financial Well-Being." Below it, I added a meaningful subtitle, "Because Authentic Love Should Never Demand Financial Sacrifice." Mom's perspective on eventual forgiveness resonated with truth, not immediately, perhaps not soon, but someday when I was ready. For now, my energy focused on creating something constructive and protective from our family's painful dissolution. That's what resilient survivors do. We transform our darkest experiences into illumination that guides others away from similar pain. Vincent and Natalie would eventually complete their sentences and be released. They would inevitably attempt to reconnect, to rebuild relationships. When that day arrived, I would meet it as a stronger, wiser person with absolutely clear, non-negotiable boundaries. I had learned perhaps the most difficult lesson possible. Sometimes genuinely loving your family means maintaining the emotional distance necessary for your own well-being. But that challenging decision belonged to another chapter. Tonight, I had a comprehensive presentation to complete, dinner arrangements with Jake and Megan to finalize, and a meaningful life to continue building, one substantially different from what I had once envisioned, but possibly exactly what I needed to become my most authentic self. After all, the most effective response to betrayal isn't perpetual anger or punishment. It's creating a fulfilling life while helping protect others from similar harm.